Okay, and it is 6:34, and I will call this regular meeting of the Conservation Commission to order on Wednesday, November 9th. So the first order of business is to amend the agenda if necessary and then accept it. Does anyone have any amendments to make to the agenda? And
Motion to approve the agenda as stated.
Seconded.
thank you. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. And any opposed? And hearing none, that motion carries. The next item on the agenda is to amend if necessary and then accept the minutes from our last meeting, which was on October, usually with a period, but today with a comma, October 12th, 2022. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah. Yes.
And are there any amendments?
No.
And
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
thanks, Melissa.
Seconded.
Thanks, Liddy.
Meeting to see if
All
anybody
in
else
favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And if any are opposed, and seeing none, that motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Liddy.
Okay, we had one expense for a conference. Thank you, Yos. Leaving us with $2,240.87 in our account, waiting to be spent on something. Then the Cougar Fund has $10,985.84, or at least it will when the Kent Land Trust and the Kent Bookstore pay their most recent invoices. We have 53 books left.
Okay, great.
We
We did pay, but it may not have made its way through yet.
Okay.
So the check is in.
And the Kent Bookstore we've got a new procedure there.
Okay.
All of their bookkeeping is handled off-site.
Oh.
So it's better if I email them rather than handing it to them.
Okay.
So that will be fixed up too.
53
But $10,000, maybe we ought to think about spending it.
I think that we're gonna have some expenses coming up for trees as the sidewalks settle in, and
Good point.
I think that we don't need to do anything at this moment. I think that we're gonna notice something next fall and
Well,
be
keep
in a
this
really
in
good
mind.
position.
Keep this in mind that on the side of the street that doesn't have wires.
Yeah.
We can make things look better.
Well, and I also know we're gonna have a phase 2, so we really need to
Phase 2.
keep the sidewalks. So we need to keep our eyes open on what is gonna need to be done once all of this sidewalk work has been done. And I think we're gonna
Well,
easily be able to spend this.
Melissa, what is phase 2?
We haven't, I don't know if we've approved it yet, but there is some work, I think, between town, the monument and the fire department, and there was some other discussion. It was in the actual proposals.
Oh, you're referring to more lengths of sidewalks then, not changes to the done
No,
sidewalk.
more
Okay.
lengths. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it's Maple Street then.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would just say that this is all gonna pan out in the next couple of, cycles very organically, I suspect. And it's gonna be obvious where we're gonna need to plant some trees, I think.
The other thing is that, although, there's an argument to be made for not just like leaving it there, to rot and be forgotten about. I just feel like with the pressing threat of climate change that there will be needs in the future that we might not have imagined.
Agreed.
Plus, if with the pollinator pathway, we want to do some pollinator gardens behind town hall, we can help with that too.
Yeah. Or buy some, electric equipment or
Electric equipment? What do you mean?
it is an alternative to gas powered or,
But the
Yeah.
Cougar Fund is supposed to be
For trees.
supposed to be for trees.
So I
And
don't.
for
know what
trees.
works.
Trees too.
I don't
We
think
are
that
gonna
works.
need trees. Trees are, in some ways the answer.
Isn't it more
Fewer
general
people,
for
more trees.
beautification and so?
I think it's
And-
quite
and so-
specifically for trees. I'll
Okay.
read it again.
Pollinator.
Yeah, We've
Oh,
actually had this conversation before, and I know, Liddy has looked it up for us before, and I'm confident this is not going to go to waste. We are going to figure this out in the next year plus.
Very
So,
good.
so how much was in the KUKA fund?
$10,985.
Mhm.
So you could do a lot with $10,000,
you good?
particularly if Bruce Bennett is helping us.
Mhm.
Well, remember, Bruce doesn't own the greenhouse anymore, Liddy, so that's,
No, I know that, but somehow or
He
other
could
it
help
seems to happen.
select and- Yeah, so, yeah, let's just take note of that and maybe there'll be something for us to make an expenditure on, okay. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Can you just keep an eye out and see if like Benjamin appears in the waiting room at some point? Like, let me know. if you
Where
see
would
them.
that show?
It'll just flash up there.
Okay.
Okay. And let the record reflect that there are no members of the public present. And I don't know why I have to write that all the way out, but I do, apparently. I started. Okay, so let's move into old business. So we have under our discussion items tonight, first off, the recent climate programs that took place, including the ones that have happened already, which are the Green Energy Initiative at Kent School. And I didn't put it down here, or Carol didn't, but the Common Ground program. Is there any feedback, summary, discussion to be had about either of those programs? And are there any next steps for our commission to take?
I'll comment on the Green Energy Initiative, okay?
Good.
I definitely want to create a subcommittee or something that can continue to investigate what more can be done and to sort of create a few people who are really specialized in knowing the things that one needs to know to be a good agency for the town. There are buildings that, were turned down for municipal buildings that were turned down before as being inappropriate because of the way the Eversource sets things up. They just wouldn't do anybody but the school. But 7 other buildings are now eligible under new rules. So that's something that somebody has to follow up. I have all of the relatively correct, it's a year old or 2 years old, data on how much electricity they use, kilowatts, etc. But that's a job to be done. But there are going to be many things that we need to follow up on. And I tried to find a way to create an independent agency. And I've called around to other towns in the state. I spoke to the town of Westport today, and they've had an independent energy agency for close to 15 years, and they're very busy. But of course, they have more volunteers, they have more population, and they have more money and bigger paid town staff. So I'm still looking for a small town in Connecticut that's figured out a way to have its own green energy task force.
What about Washington?
Well, I mean, I've got a bunch of friends on their conservation commission. They don't really do anything there. I'm not sure what else Washington has.
The Environmental Council, they have a very strong nonprofit group.
Well, that means, yeah, if they're truly a nonprofit, that means a lot of legal setup
And Sharon has a environmental and energy.
yes, but that is part of, I just talked to Doug Rick today about that. They have a very active group, and I was fantasizing that he and I could join forces because Sharon and Kent are very similar in demographics and circumstances. And he'd love to do that, but they are actually an appointed commission, just as we are. With all the FOI and all of the schedules and standard meetings and the whole 9 yards.
Hmm.
So, anybody who can come up with a solution that's a little more nimble, I'd love to hear about it. And I am looking into it.
Can't you just join up with some leaders in the surrounding towns like this informally with this person in chair? And
Well,
maybe
I can't do it as a member of the Conservation Commission.
No, but separately, and you wouldn't have to be an official committee or anything.
Well, no, you wouldn't, but I don't want to carry the whole thing on my shoulders indefinitely. I'd like to use the same people like Dana Slaughter and Joanne Wasty and what's her name? Julie, you know who I mean.
Sexton, probably, right?
Yeah. I'd like to hold that little group together because we worked well together, but I haven't found the umbrella under which we can do it. And that has to be done. That has to be figured out, or I have to abandon that idea and just operate within the Conservation Commission. But my sense is that we have more than we can handle already. And this would be a very time engaging activity.
Could you get that group together just ad hoc?
And how about having it be another commission? Why
Call it
not?
whatever. I mean, right, you probably could get the town to appoint it as a commission, but then there would be like minuting and FOIA and all of
And
that.
we need to
Or
put in for a budget and so on.
why couldn't you just be like a club or a task force until such time comes? I think that was my.
Well, I could,
Yeah.
but then I can't. I mean, you would expect this to be part of the Conservation Commission, I think. I mean, that's the way it was introduced originally. As you noticed, I hope, I kept my name out of this as much as possible so that the Conservation Commission would get all the glory.
Wendy, what if you met with that subgroup and reported back to us?
Well, yeah, I can do those things. It's just that then I would like to do a little less. I still owe the Conservation Commission a revision of the natural resources inventory, which is a huge job all by itself. Even though many of you have submitted materials, but putting it together will be for Liddy and me, a huge job.
Maybe the group, if you were the point person on the commission, the group could do the lion's share of the work and your function would be more of coordinating and reporting.
Well, anyway, I would have loved to have come to you tonight with an answer, but it's been hard to get a hold of other groups to get more advice, but I'm working on it. That's really what I'm saying.
Is there any other action that comes out of October 15th and the school program that went along with that?
Well, I think I'd like to get a report from the school program. I was sort of hoping that Carol could take that on and find out whether they created an actual climate club and whether they've come up with some projects. I thought we'd give them a little time to think about that, but that's something that has to be followed up on because I'm sure they're going to need some nudging. And I do want to follow up on getting these other municipal buildings resubmitted for solar help, but I'm going to have to spend some time with the selectmen. I don't find, again, they seem rather disinterested. None of them came. No, Jean came. No, not a single person from P&Z came. I really was hoping they would. There's a lot to be learned.
Did it get filmed, by the way?
Did they what?
And able to make it, and I was really hoping that they would film it. Do you know?
It was filmed.
It is. The library has it on
And so you can't actually say that I mean, yes, they didn't come in person, but
No.
they very well may have watched it, and I just,
Oh, well, I don't know that, and it's been made public yet. I don't
it
know how
has.
the library said about that, but okay.
It's
Well,
been made public, and it was in Maria's newsletter this past week.
Can you circulate that link to our commission, please? And maybe we should put it on our webpage
Okay.
Mhm.
for people that were unable to make it. It did end up being a relatively busy day in the middle of October for many people. I think that's been an issue with lots of things.
No,
That
we actually had a surprising number of people from other towns, which is what we hoped all along. So that was good. And there was a good exchange of questions. And I have something I just learned about today that I want to go back to Maria Horn about and see what can be done about it. There is hold on here. The Energy News Network. I just got this story from Connecticut considers stretch code that lets cities push builders on efficiency. In Massachusetts, New York, and Vermont, towns are given the option to create more stringent codes for things like insulation. And I'm going to ask Maria Horn, since it made its way to Hartford, but it just never got passed, if she wouldn't look into this and see if this isn't something we could do. You can say, well, yeah, that raises the cost of building and the construction people are bothered by it. But the fact is it saves money in the long run if you have a better insulated house. And that's what these other states have determined was worth doing. So I'd like to have them look into it anyway. And I think Maria Horn, being on the environmental and the technology committees, is the perfect person. So I'm going to send that to her. I thought it was interesting. So anyway, I'm flailing around trying to figure out how to do things.
Have you checked with Cornwall?
Yeah. That the whole thing is is pretty much Catherine Freigang, and she and I chat quite often.
Well, I just think that I just learned something new yesterday that I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing. I didn't realize Gordon Ridgway lived off grid. He lives with a complete solar system and battery system, and I'm interested to go and tour his property and see how that all works. I'm intrigued by it. I had no idea.
Yeah,
kind of cool. So kind of cool things happen in Cornwall and that do happen outside of the Catherine Freigang.
I wonder how many of you have actually read the baseline energy analysis for Kent. There's some pretty stunning numbers in there. For
I read
example, that Kent spends $5,435 per resident on energy every year. That's pretty amazing.
Mhm.
And if we could truly cut that by 50%, which is within the realms of possibility, if we got sufficient numbers of people behind it, that'd be great. I also learned that even though nobody from the condos came, they thought about it later and are now looking into getting some solar on their buildings. I don't know how practical that is because of the way the buildings are, they're owned as how condominiums are. But nobody there, they all said, oh, we got heat pumps, but most of their heat pumps are 20 years old or something, and they bear no resemblance to the heat pumps that are being offered now, but they were not interested when I went to them to learn more about it. So it's going to take time. People resist.
Yeah.
So that's my story. And then maybe it's appropriate. Well, when do you want me to talk about sustainable Kent?
Not until
Uh,
updates.
Is there another? It's on the.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
far
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We're gonna try and get to,
Wendy, is there any way that we can work on those 7 other buildings, though?
Yeah, it all takes so much time, and I have been so far behind on so many other things. I finished all my paid jobs as of last week. But that means
You're
I
retiring.
need a week or two just to catch up with things before I can plunge in again. But I do plan to do that. I mean, I have all the
I'd
data.
like to help you with that. And I think Dana helped you also with the school when you succeeded with doing the school. So if there's
The school, yeah, the school I think is, it's in other hands now and everything is moving as it should.
Right, but to do it for the other 7 buildings.
Oh.
sort of the way you did it for the school, so we can use that to do it for the other ones, I would hope.
Well, one thing is, I think that because it's a new ruling, that there's a way to do microgrids or something. It's going to take a little while to figure out what the mechanics of this new system are. I have to find that out. There are people I can go to. I just, I've said that it's something we need to do, but I haven't done it yet. But
Wendy,
certainly and then you go to the fire department and they have in mind, oh, we don't want to cede our building to a group of anything. We own this building and we'll do it. But of course, they've done nothing since they said that I've heard about. The thing is just on the back burner. But I'll pursue it. It just
That's not one of the 7 buildings, though.
I think.
Oh,
we're
it
gonna
is. It is.
municipally- Oh, I thought you were talking about municipally owned buildings.
Well, it falls under that category. They could take advantage of the particular MAP program, which is Municipal Assistance Program, because they are quasi-municipal. I mean, they get a whole lot of money from the town. There's Mike.
Just let them in.
So yeah, they would qualify. They qualified to be measured by Eversource and considered, but then they turned out they don't use that much electricity there.
Okay.
And
Well,
not-
Okay,
In any case, Wendy, I'd love to help you with those 7.
Okay, you got it.
good. Okay. Moving on to the Common Ground program. I don't know how many of you saw it. You were there.
Yeah,
I did.
I know, I don't really know that there's much to discuss. I enjoyed the program. It was a little bit more, global in scope. I thought that it was both scary and hopeful at the same time. And, just the demographic of the people attending the program was in stark contrast to the issues, the true human welfare issues that were raised by the programming.
True.
But I don't know that there's anything for our little commission to follow up about the program.
no, nothing specific. No.
No, I just appreciated the seats were free, and that was very good of them to do that.
Yeah.
So.
And then we have upcoming on November 19th, the Douglas Brinkley program at the library, which is being co-sponsored by almost every nearby conservation-based organization around, and should be an interesting presentation.
That was at community house, Dave? Yeah, what was it?
Brinkley, I think it's here.
No, it's at Kent School, I believe.
Oh, it's at Kent
Kent?
School, right? Yes.
Same auditorium as this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. We good to move on to the ordinance?
Yes.
So I know that I told you that I'd have this all wrapped up by this meeting. And of course, that was more ambitious than I really had the time for, because I barely had the time to put our draft meeting calendar together. But I did overlook some of the things that are relevant, and I queued them up prior to the meeting, so I'm going to share screen here. And the first of those things is, oh, where's the POCD? Yeah, I think the first of those things is the POCD draft, which will go before public hearing tomorrow. And I just wanted to remind myself and all of us about where this open space ordinance appears in the POCD. So there's no way that Yost and Liddy, you'll be able to read this from here. But it is on, let's see if I can find the page. So of course my key bar is in the way. So on page 40 of the draft, and we can just manipulate.
I got it. I got it.
On page 40 of the draft, oh boy, okay. You can see that in the recommendations that are about preserving open space, there is a place where they say, let's recognize the Conservation Commission as the lead town agency for coordinating open space preservation efforts, establish a land acquisition fund, and here it's specifically recommended that that acquisition fund be created to receive fee in lieu of open space payments. So they chose actually, or there's a preference for the mechanism expressed here in our POCD revision. There is another mention, I thought, oh, there's just like some corollary recommendations about changing the subdivision regulations to make it clear that there could be a payment of a fee in lieu of open space, and that open space definitions could be tightened in the subdivision regulations, as well as a affirmative requirement to include public access and trails as part of open space reservations in those subdivisions. So that was kind of the first thing, was just kind of like, where's the town think it's going on this?
The fee in lieu of open space has always been possible. It's just never used in Kent.
Yeah, it certainly would take a very long time to have enough fees gathered to do anything. I would have hoped to see some portion raised as set aside in our annual budget.
So, yeah, so that's another good point to bring up. And one of the things that I had in my file was this paper, which is pretty recent, January 2022, published by, I think, Highstead and Harvard Forest. And we were talking about this, I think, in a previous meeting. Mike, maybe you were making reference to this. I think I put some yellow highlighting in here. Let's see. No, I thought I did. What I took away from this, I did. What I took away from this paper is that, this is what I remembered from the Trust for Public Land, that it's more complicated than just saying, open space costs us less in municipal taxes than developed space. And what they were finding is that, depending on whether a town was urban, rural, and depending on the rate of growth in certain towns, that it really varied. So this was interesting, but what was even more telling was this study that the town of Roxbury, and I can forward all of these around. Actually, I think we were going to ask Darlene to make like a Google Drive like the P&Z has to contain the documentation that that goes with our meetings. But this is a study that the town of Roxbury did in conjunction with their open space ordinance. And is there a date on it? It was when there was a referendum for their town to establish an open space fund. And this is kind of like a Q&A. It'll be, if we ever get to this point, it could be really useful for us to follow their model in terms of the information that we compile to to make a good case for people voting yes. But in terms of the information that I highlighted, what they found when they did an analysis for the town of Roxbury is that, they said usually in these towns, the residential property tax only accounts for about 85% of tax revenues, and that's balanced out by corporate taxes and for taxes paid on undeveloped space. And that in the town of Roxbury, that was not true because they had so low of a corporate tax base, and undeveloped open space was enrolled in the PA 490. So it didn't work out, that equation, and they were finding that like 95% of their tax base was coming from residential. So they said that usually you could make an argument that for every dollar paid, I think, in taxes, that there would be, no, what for, there was that usually business real estate and open space property taxes produced $2.33 in revenue for every dollar of municipal services that they use, but that is not the same equation than what they found when they did this for the town of Roxbury. So,
and I think it matters a lot also the schools. The schools are the biggest cost, and if your school is nearly full, then growing your residential base means you're going to have to build a new school, which
Yes.
raises the cost a lot. In our case, our schools have become way below full capacity. And so if our
there's something
population
like that.
increases,
Where is it?
it doesn't increase the cost for schooling. So
Yeah.
residences don't cost as much as they could in other cases.
Here it is, Yos, exactly as you said. Whether future residential development will pay for itself depends on the number of children per new dwelling in the system. So it really depends on patterns in Kent's growth. So that's interesting because that doing a study like that would inform whether for us it would make more sense to add a bit to the mill rate to fund a land acquisition fund or to use another mechanism. The next place that I went was to the land acquisition committee report that was completed in 2008. Way back when, which compiled the different ways that these funds are funded. One method is what we were just talking about, where there's a small property tax increase, and that goes into a fund. Sometimes it's an annual budget line item that the town would just channel into the fund. Fee in lieu of open space, you can see the pros and cons where, here, Wendy, you were mentioning for fee in lieu of open space, the problem is that it doesn't really produce sufficient income. And increases the cost of housing, which we already know is an issue here in Kent for some
It doesn't
strata of
increase
housing.
any costs because otherwise they have to set aside open space. It's either set aside open space or pay some money. So it doesn't cost the developer anything extra.
I don't know. That's what this report
Yeah.
says. So I haven't examined the whys behind all of that, but they list that as a con. And it may be thought of as, here in a time where already costs are ballooning because of inflation, all of the other issues with construction right now. And, I don't know how much we want to monkey around in the housing market, but that is the third way. And then the fourth way on this page tabulated is an undesignated general reserve fund, which is probably not the way that we would want to go. Some towns would issue a bond, either a general obligation bond or a revenue bond.
Well,
So-
it seems to me, even if we haven't done that in the past, let's say in some fantastic way that a piece of property comes up next year, we ought to have at least as an option or to discuss that such a thing like a bond issue could be made under certain circumstances. It's not the first choice for sure, but if something really that would be a wonderful addition to the town for whatever reason, like more space for the school, we wouldn't want to pass it up simply because we hadn't planned ahead, would we?
No, and so that also brings up another thing that I called up before this meeting, which is an email from Matt Winter that just collected for us very neatly some of these enabling statutes, right? So if you look on the second line here, there's the Connecticut general statutes that allows municipalities to purchase land for open space. So that's like the go ahead to do something like this. Then the next statute that he cites is a statute that allows towns to participate in state funding options. So this is like OSWA. So the same way that land trusts will make use of state funding to purchase open space, municipalities are also eligible to do that under Connecticut state law. The next statute that he cites is state law providing for the creation of a land acquisition and development authority, which is what it gives municipalities the ability to designate a body of people, either a separate commission or the Conservation Commission as the entity that would oversee. And that is what's recommended in the POCD, that the Conservation Commission serve that function. And then this last statute, which is an annual funding, municipal funding of a land acquisition fund that would allow us to tack on a tax if we went that way. He makes note of this bill that we followed, 6441 House bill, that didn't pass, but will be likely to be proposed in the future. So the question is, Wendy, it's probably not putting the cart before the horse to line up some of these things, even if we don't have the mechanism for funding it yet. And coming out of, and let me see if I can find this last bit. If I can find my cursor. There it is. Okay. I think it was in the Land Acquisition Committee's report from all the way back in 2008. There were these recommendations. I yellowed out. Not yet. Nope. They talk about the town of Roxbury. They talk about the town of Washington. Here's the findings and recommendations. So the first recommendation that they make is that the Board of Selectmen appoint a standing land acquisition advisory committee, which really could just be that the Board of Selectmen appoint the Conservation Commission as the body that would be responsible for considering these things as recommended in our POCD rewrite. Second recommendation is that the town can establish a land acquisition fund. So no, that is a standalone recommendation without saying how that shall be funded, just that it exists. The next recommendation that they make is that we actually do a cost of community services study, so that like Roxbury, we have the facts before us to be able to say, you know, this is how much of our tax revenue comes from residential, open space, commercial. This is what we might expect to happen if the town were to to fund a land acquisition fund or to protect more open space and remove that from the tax revenues.
Now, was that important for Roxbury that they had that?
I think
Okay.
so, because that's the only way that you verify an assertion that it will be.
Well, they couldn't assert, they found out that they couldn't assert that it was cheaper. So in that case, does it help at all? I mean, it doesn't,
Maybe not.
you can
Maybe
also
it
say,
doesn't help to
yeah.
find out that what you might argue is not exactly true.
but we don't have to save money on open space. We can just say there are good reasons to be able to have the money if we want to, if we think some open space is important enough to spend money on. It's good to have that money available then.
I feel like if we're gonna increase anyone's taxes at all, we need to have the
a better
facts in
reason.
at our fingertips.
Mhm.
So I mean, and then the next recommendation we've done, we can check the box. That was about the build out analysis, which we did back in 2012, and we still have the results from that. And then
I wonder if under this land acquisition, if we didn't have a fund that just establish it, even if there was just a little bit of money in it, as a sort of a grant, the way we have with the community fund, that let people know that such a fund exists, so that maybe when they write their wills, they can name an existing fund
yeah,
just to get this started.
yeah,
Isn't the Kent Community Fund a separate 501c3? Not, I mean, here we are back at that conversation from the beginning of the meeting of difference between the town and a town conservation commission and a separate entity. I mean,
Well, that's why we have a lawyer. I mean, let's find out. I mean, I would ask the P&Z to investigate if it wouldn't be smart to just create a place to park money.
I think it has to be a town fund. It has to be a town-owned fund, but that certainly can be created. And why not create it, even
Why
if it's
not?
empty?
Mhm.
Or
And
it's-
the money has to stay in there, only be used for those certain uses. It can't go into the general fund.
Right,
That's very important.
so
I
And
mean, the
a
Suniti
number of
Kuga
other
Fund was
things-
given to the town. And look how that's developed. It was sitting there untended for decades.
That doesn't go back into the general fund.
Yeah, and it would, but
Right, and that-
we pulled it out. And look how fortunate we are.
2,000 isn't going to get us much of anywhere.
Mm.
However, and it's interesting when you look at the experience of certain towns in using their open space funds, because not all towns have found that they were able to use it all that much. Like Sherman doesn't really use theirs.
Mhm.
Goshen has had difficulties too. New Hartford used it and used it effectively.
Sherman actually did use it. They bought that farm on Route 39
Yeah.
with a silo.
Yep.
So, but there's also a number of other funding sources that you haven't mentioned yet. So all penalties paid on the Public Act 490 can be deposited.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that was supposedly $50,000 a year on average. So that's one thing. Another one is the funds that are remitted to the town for the recording of real estate conveyances in the Kent's town clerk's office, and that's pursuant to statute 12-494. So those now go to the town clerk. Originally, that was supposed to go to a fund like this.
Maybe
And-
the town doesn't want to give it up.
Well, Darlene, years ago, when we were talking about this land acquisition fund, she said, well, I'm getting this money.
Mhm.
You can use that for a land acquisition fund. She mentioned it herself at the time.
Right, so I think what we need is a mechanism, and I think what we need is, so the other thing that is in, I think it's, I don't want to share up documents again, but it's in the POCD draft. That, you know, that the Conservation Commission is the primary agency for overseeing, you know, what the town might need for open space. So I think these are not in necessarily in chronological order. There's no reason they can't be worked on simultaneously, but I think we have to do our open space plan. We have to say, you know, there's a finite number of parcels in town that the town might be interested in protecting, and these are what they are. And this is why, you know, and those could be purposes that are protective of natural resources, or they could be things that are more connected to recreational opportunities for our town, our municipality, but we need to do that open space plan, and that is.
Aren't there the open spaces that have already been identified in the POCD?
Yes,
So
so
do it
we can
again?
just say,
Gotta do it again?
no, we
Oh,
could
okay.
maybe just draw them right out from there. I don't know that we have to do any analysis anew, but if we were able to say,
Okay.
there's 10 or less, there's 10 or fewer, you know,
Right.
parcels that might be applicable here.
Okay.
So, and that's the open space plan. We need to get the town to say, the Conservation Commission would be the committee. We need to get the town to establish the fund. And then we need one or more funding mechanisms that can feed the fund.
And I think you need
Three of those can happen
to-
right away.
Yeah,
to define in some way what constitutes a desirable open space. It isn't necessarily, I mean, you named some, but I just was talking to the fellow in Sherman today, Sharon, and they were not able to put up solar on their school roof, but they were determined to get solar there. And they discovered they had, there was a piece of property adjoining the school. It wasn't an attractive piece, but it was a place where they could put solar with the, you know, in the parking lot. But they were able to extend the parking lot, and the same thing behind town hall there. So it could be another kind of land, but it would be valuable to the town for some other reason.
I think that's a good point, Wendy. I would not call that open space, but I would call that something that might be important for the town to invest and purchase.
Yeah.
So that is an important consideration in defining, you know, what and where. I think Yost is at Goshen that puts housing, affordable housing as part of their ordinance too, as a purpose.
I think
I think that was.
Washington, probably.
So,
more broadly it's defined, it seems the more likely the town would ultimately be able to use any of the funds that end up in there. It would be, as you said, not a great thing if there were money sitting there forever that the town couldn't use.
The only thing is, then you're gonna get struggles between people who want to spend it on affordable housing. Some
Versus
people
open
want
space.
services and others want open space.
Well, spending it on affordable housing, if the state is going to set a requirement for each town, that wouldn't be so bad. I mean, you know, when they, I forget what their requirement is, and they've just handed every town.
adopted our housing plan.
Yeah.
It's, what is it, 20 units in 5 years, I think is what it is. That's our goal. So anyway, I think that's where we should go with it, right?
So you don't want to build town support first before we set the committee and ask for a fund?
Do you think there needs to be town support if?
Well,
we're not
that's what
talking
you
about-
have been saying for,
If we're not
last
talking about
year.
money, if it's not impacting taxpayers in their pocketbooks, then I don't think we need to do that. I think what we're doing is laying the groundwork, and that this, you know, this is the kind of thing that, like, as Wendy said, if a property came on the market tomorrow and the town needed to borrow money for it, I mean, that would obviously have to go to the townspeople.
I think there are 3 things we could do right away. Do that open space plan, list those items, designate Conservation Commission, and create the fund.
I think open space plan is probably gonna take some time though.
Not
No,
if they're
it won't.
already designated, not if they're
What?
already designated. It just, it comes up with, you come up with a list of those that have already been talked about.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be, it doesn't have to be a shiny report. It can make reference to other documents, doesn't have to be fancy. Just has to be a list of parcels that are undeveloped, that are on the radar. They might be parcels that are owned by people who may or may not take issue,
Yeah.
but.
So, and would you list individual parcels or areas? Because we've talked about that in the past too, and I think you and some people said, well, you can't pinpoint individual parcels because then you
Their
create
value.
the owners and you may raise the cost of the land.
I think it's a good point, and we have to see
Yeah.
what we have before we decide.
I mean,
Right.
if nothing else, we'd all love to have Golden Falcons field there. That would be the #1 open space that
You want the
Like-
town to own that? I
I
don't care.
want somebody to
Yeah,
own it.
nice
I don't
little-
want McDonald's to own it.
Be a nice little.
It's
park.
owned.
I'd love to see a.
Yeah,
pocket
but it's,
park there.
but she could do something else with that.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that Casey's couldn't just turn around and
Right.
turn it into a Burger
Right.
King or whatever.
And usually these funds could purchase easements as well as the fee interest.
Mhm.
So it can be town owned, or it can just be purchase of development rights.
So, and what like buying an easement along the river for a trail along the river over the
An
Casey
access
land there?
easement,
Yeah,
yeah, it could be
Yeah.
something like that too. But I think that is like. I don't want us to get slowed down. You know, by feeling like we have to decide everything before we even put pen to paper. So I think that we can maybe make some conclusions in an open space plan that these are the opportunities, these are the potential uses that we think the town should be looking at. As Wendy said, there is a list of those in the 2008 report, so we can drag those out, take a fresh look at it, see if that still makes sense. You know, these are some of the parcels that we think might be important. We can decide if we want to be that explicit or not in the open space plan, but let's start by just looking.
Is this
And-
ultimately going to be suggested to the draft POCD?
No, the POCD will be adopted tomorrow night. It's done.
So why are they having a meeting?
There's a public hearing to vote on it.
Just to vote,
Yes.
not to make any suggestions.
There are comments that have been received, and those emails are in the the Google Drive for P and Z. And so I'm sure they'll discuss those comments, and they'll probably take comments from the public.
But not do anything because they'll vote on it.
I believe it'll pass. Our commission's already also endorsed it. Just as.
Well, the town doesn't have to vote on it, it's just the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they have adopted it already, basically. It just had to be made available for public hearing.
About
But
I
I
think it-
thought this was our opportunity to point out gaps.
No, but let's, that is the next agenda item. So if we're gonna turn to that, does that sound like a good plan for our Conservation Commission to compile the open space plan? To ask the selectmen to appoint the KCC as the acting committee that would oversee a land acquisition fund and a program, to ask, you know, to get to the point of, and I'm not sure the legalities of how you do this, but to figure out how to ask the select board and the Board of Finance to create a land acquisition fund, but not necessarily to fund it yet, while we discuss possible funding mechanisms. And to do those things first.
So does that mean we need an ordinance?
I don't know.
Not yet,
I don't think so.
No,
not yet.
I don't think we do. I mean,
because other towns did an ordinance establishing a land acquisition fund. So,
I'm not sure. Let me look. And if we do, then we'll do one that is general enough to do the things that we just mentioned. That
I support what Connie just said.
sound like a plan? Okay. Okay. So I don't think we need to vote on anything there. But more coming in December. And let's move to updates to the public hearing on the POCD, which is not November 12th, it's November 10th, which is tomorrow, 7 p.m. And I hope that you'll go.
Can't do it. Can't be
Zoom.
there.
It's Zoom. And I don't know, it looks like it's going to be a long meeting because there are a couple of things on the agenda that I think are going to take some discussion. But the POCD, I think, is
I think it's one of the first items, or it's the second.
first they
public
have Club Getaway. And yeah, and then they have the POCD.
Oh, well, if this is truly a done deal, I'd be reluctant to go. I mean, I see things here that,
Well, we've commented on their first draft. That was the time when we could speak up, right?
And they made the
Then-
changes that we asked them to.
Yeah.
did we ever ask them to do anything about composting? That's not mentioned anywhere.
No, I don't think that was brought up, but I think it's a bit too late now.
And they have, and there is nothing here that proposes that the town create regulations for solar.
Well, they took some of your advice and added some of that.
well, I've
Yes.
since seen that Sharon has a 2-page insert in their regulations that they just drafted back in January of this year that says how high off the ground the solar can be. It's got a number of sensible conditions, and I don't see that we have anything here. It's as if solar,
Well, remember that the POCD is not a regulation.
no, it's not. But if they don't say that they plan to do something about this, I have no faith that they will.
I have no faith that they'll do it even if it is in the POCD.
Well,
I-
that brings me back to
really,
where
I
I
think
started, which is this is a stupid book.
We had this conversation in our meetings earlier that it's not so much the POCD and its content, which can be helpful. It's really what the organizations charged with carrying it forward do after it, which is exactly why we're planning to run with the land acquisition fund and committee. But it's the P&Z and what they do, to update their regulations. You'll find in the folder for tomorrow's meeting that Ty Kern hit the ground running and has forwarded an email from Glenn about suggested ways that they can update their regulations. So to me, getting this off the P&Z's plate actually puts them back on their feet to take some action again. But Wendy, it may be too late to your point, it may be too late to make those individual, those comments about, what is not in it, that should be.
There's something fundamentally crazy about this.
Well, it's very general.
It's a wish list. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
It's aspirational, but
right.
you know, it doesn't give us anything that
Well, who's us though?
I'm as a citizen.
Well, it gives you the possibility to fill it in with details and with actions. It says you're allowed, or they encourage you to do this and that. So, and that's all they can do, I think, in the planning conservation.
Well, I would think they could spell out how they plan to encourage these things. Are they going to incentivize things? Are they going to, but I've lost the game, so I'll step back. It's over.
It's only just begun. Tomorrow begins what we can actually do. So I personally am looking forward to the adoption of the POCD because I think that it assigns to the Conservation Commission, some perspective responsibility, and I think that we can be helpful in,
What, like what? What are some examples?
well, the land acquisition fund being,
That, we just talked about that.
yeah,
But
There's a-
we're asking them to designate us as that.
yeah,
So
and
that's
we
not
do.
there yet, but what are some
No, it
other
is kind
things?
of in there.
What
So
are some other things?
when you go through the recommendations at the end of each section, they have the responsible party. And the KCC is next to several of the actions. So is
I'm just
P and
wondering if
Z.
you could just tell what they are.
I don't know what they all are. I do know that one of
Land
the things
acquisition.
we're supposed to do is to keep focusing on trails. And the Kent Trails book is in there, a picture of it. And I know you don't want to hear that because you don't ever
No.
want to do it again.
Never.
But it is in there in the recommendations that the Kent Conservation Commission should be the authority that is looking over public access in the town of Kent and trails. So take a read through, and I will too. I was looking tonight specifically for land acquisition fund, but there are a number of things that we could take action on, including green energy and energy forward and conservation, recycling type initiatives.
They're
So
not mentioned in it, but we can take action on those.
I would be surprised if KCC were not the initials next to many of those functions.
Composting.
Sustainable CT, the sustainability committee or whatever it might be, is more likely to be next to something like composting, but that is for another update, which Wendy can give as we get down there.
Okay. let's
Okay,
move on.
because it may be that it ends up coming back to our commission. Okay, Kent Trails a Hiker's Guide,
Already told you that one.
new book selling fast, 53 left, everyone loves, etc., etc. The Common Grounders, the panelists all got a free copy.
Oh.
So we're famous well beyond Kent now. Native plants and pollinator pathways. I don't know that there's anything for discussion in this meeting. Do you think, Melissa? No.
Did you still want to set up a meeting with some people from the town?
We do. The thought is to do that closer to Nomome. So, in about a
Okay.
February time
Hmm.
period, so that people are both remembering and gearing up for next year.
But you didn't want it to interfere also with the budget deliberations, because that takes up a lot of
Mm.
people's time, right?
I think it's different people, probably. I mean, some of it's the town, but I think it's different people too. Our
Yeah.
thought was it was different people too.
We'll
Okay.
make sure that people can participate.
Yep.
It won't just be one day or the highway.
What became of no rake?
Of Leave the Leaves,
Yeah,
did you read yours?
I'm raking mine like crazy.
Leave the Leaves is still going on.
So
And,
do you leave on your lawn too?
well,
They
If it's
become,
me, I'd say yes.
slippery
If
and
that's
dangerous if you.
no. Maybe compromise and, rake off or do the lawn area.
We just chopped.
Chop up
Yeah.
all those little cocoons if you want to.
Well, are the cocoons in the lawn?
They're in the
Because-
leaves.
Yeah, in the lawn?
They might be in the leaves on the lawn.
You think so?
Morning cloaks are, that's where I've
Yeah.
always found those butterflies.
Hmm.
But you could shrink
Yeah.
your lawn so
Yeah.
that you didn't feel quite so bad for chopping those ones up or raking off.
I like to mow them and just chop them up into fertilizer, which is what, works just fine as far as I'm concerned. But
Do what you like, just don't, blow them with a gas leaf blower
Nope.
all over the place.
I will continue conversations with my employer about shrinking some of the lawn space, which is what you were just suggesting.
Yeah. Gosh, I noticed a lot of extra lawn at Trinity Pauling today behind the turf field. Just goes up into the hills. And I'm like, why do they have that? Is there anything on the other side? No.
I
So,
just had a problem with on client's property where we had a meadow area and I had added other native plants to it. And then he mowed it, the whole thing. He was supposed to mow it not till early spring,
yeah.
but they mowed it a couple of weeks ago. He said
Oh,
it's
gosh.
easier to mow it then than after it has been flattened by snow and so. But we wanted it to be natural and last through the winter.
Yeah.
Looks much better, plus it provides some wildlife and all that. But
Yeah. All the seed
the
pods, all
lawn
the shelter.
companies don't always do what you want. So
They don't. It's going to be gradual.
Yeah.
I think.
Mm.
Sustainable CT. Wendy, what do you got for us?
They're having a hard time. The everybody keeps resigning. The chairman resigned today. People just being pulled too many directions. But another part of the problem, they invited me to sit in on it. I said, I thought they ought to get a couple of old timers on their committee. And Jean said, well, because who would know what some of the things are that are already in the works here? And Jean said, oh, but we need to engage newcomers. I said, well, yeah, I agree with that. But you need a Catherine Backrack or somebody like that who can say to them, here's what we've already done, because they just are batting around a lot. I don't know how much is. I know a couple of people on the commission who are discouraged. That's all I can say. But they're going to go back and see if they can get some help from the larger.
Call from Charity Suzanne.
I'm sorry, I got to answer this. I'll be right back.
Can you put yourself on mute?
I'll go out of the room.
I-
Hi there.
There.
Faster if you can.
Okay. Yeah, I did see Sustainable CT's agenda and saw that Miranda
I think she's
resigned.
back.
So I can ask her to unmute. There she goes. All right, Wendy.
So I don't know what to say, except that they've existed now for nearly a year, I think. And I don't know that they've got much of anything going. Joanne Wasty is the only one who seems to have something she's actually working on. I was kind of discouraged on their behalf, and I told them about the way that New Milford did it, which was amazing to see. But they don't have a Mussolini running it the way New Milford did. I mean, I would get phone calls from that director, leader, chairman at 6:30 in the morning and sometimes at 10 at night. I mean, this was a bulldog. They don't have a bulldog. And I think, they'd like to give it back to us. That's a sense I have.
Yeah.
I said, no.
Which is kind of why I thought that when the POCD is adopted and there are provisions and there are recommendations in there that are related to recycling, that we would be perfectly welcome to carry some of those forward.
They've been together since April 22nd of 2021. That was their first meeting.
Well, that's a long time to be, still as
Yes.
There's
uncertain.
so much on their plate. I mean, there's so much to do.
It's more about project management and
Mhm.
knowing where to access the information that you need, like
Yeah.
Wendy says.
Mhm.
So, it depends. It's a skill set that once you have it, then you move forward.
Mm. But Jean is on the committee and she knows where everything is. So she
But
can
she
put
does
them in the
not have the
direction.
time to
No, I
project
know, but
manage.
she can put them in the direction, right? She can
I mean,
point them
somebody
where they-
needs to just say, we're going to
Yeah.
work on this area, these bites. How
Mhm.
do we do on those?
And set deadlines, get people to
It's
follow
not
through.
hard. It is time consuming.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay.
I'll only tell you that New Milford, of course, is a bigger town, but I'll bet you they had 30 people on that committee. Easily.
They have 30 people that wanted to do it, and we have nobody who really wants to do
No,
it. Besides Joy Lusty is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to discourage them further, but
So
Wendy, do you think that there's any benefit to sustainable CT? Is New Milford seeing grants being given to them because of their effort in sustainable CT? Like, is Cornwall seeing that come? I mean, what is the goal, and is it really happening?
I think it was a good thing for New Milford. It was a very it gave them a great lift. I think it's good for the Chamber of Commerce. It's good for encouraging new families to move to New Milford and get jobs. I think they are using it effectively. For us, it seems a little redundant in a way. But I
that's really true. I mean, but why isn't the POCD just as helpful as sustainable CT, except for the money that they dangle in front
Well,
of you?
that's why I was asking if the actual dangling of the money is a actual benefit, or is it just saying that it's there and no one's ever actually seen money come to our town from it? And I don't have the answer.
Well, people have seen money come, but I think it's also to get people in town active in all kinds of issues to get them to improve the town in many, many ways.
But we're already active in all these issues, so active that we don't have time to do any more issues.
my guess is that they could then go for funding, and if they have this completed gold stamp, they can go for funding all over the place.
I think it was a valid question, Melissa, but I also think that it's not really worth us debating it unless we feel like we want to take it on.
No.
I
So-
totally agree. That was
Move
kind of
on.
where my questioning was going.
Okay, so sustainable materials management in Kent, no update. Does anyone else know of any update?
I don't know what that means. What is?
It's recycling.
Oh,
No, composting. That's the
It's
compost.
both. Materials management is how you deal with your waste.
oh, I thought it was how you got rid of pressure treated lumber.
I read that HRRA received grants from DEP for the organics recycling. So I wonder if that means that Kent is now getting a grant too.
I
for that.
wonder, but I have not heard anything.
Yeah.
Wasn't Jean gonna look into that?
She applied for it. We just haven't heard.
Yeah, I think that she was waiting to hear on the grant that she had applied for, that
For
she
composting.
had been told by HRRA that it was coming and there just was no news for a very long time. So maybe it's going to move forward now, but we don't really know. Until we know, we don't know.
So she's the source for that then? Jean?
Yeah,
It wasn't brought up in the last selectmen's meeting last week.
And I heard that at Kakiwik conference that the tipping fee for recycling is now $120 a ton, which is huge.
Mhm.
And it had gone down to 45 last year during COVID. Apparently because there was such a demand for paper and cardboard. But now it went way back up to $120. And I also heard that the contamination rate of the recycling was 20%.
That only 5% of what goes into recycling actually gets recycled.
That's of the plastic.
Yeah. It's not about, it is totally not about recycling. That was never going to solve our problem. That is just a smokescreen. Until we reduce production, we're not going to touch it.
Well, paper and cardboard and aluminum cans, they do get recycled. Glass can be recycled if it's collected separately.
It's still
And-
not efficient. I mean,
Well,
all we do is make ourselves feel better,
mhm.
with the idea of recycling. But the
Yeah.
problem really is that we are too consumptive.
And that the industry that produces the very difficult to manage materials has never been incentivized to change their behavior. And we've been chasing our tails since before I was born.
So the state also wants to pass an act this year for extended producer responsibility
Yeah,
for packaging materials.
EPR.
But yeah, which is great, but they also said that the one for tires, which they've been trying to pass for 5 years, has been failing for 5 years. So I don't see the packaging one pass. I mean, it'd be great if it did, but that would be one help. And California is doing some things that may lead to changes because they have power because of their scale.
Hey, look, I don't know a single person who, well, it's probably not true. But how many people do you see grocery shopping who aren't using reusable bags? That change was so easy to make.
Yeah,
So
great.
there's hope. It's not completely hopeless. It's just that we do need to work on the EPR because we could be great at recycling, but we can't recycle black plastic at our transfer station because the machine doesn't recognize it. And so all of the Chinese takeout that you get is non-recyclable, but it is recyclable. It's just not recyclable here. It's so hard to solve it once you've got something that's out, in the public. To figuring out how to reclaim it is.
Has anybody thought to ask the people at the Chinese restaurant to use a different dish?
They'll switch and then the rules will switch, Wendy. I mean, yeah, maybe, but
But it's also IGA. It's not just the Chinese food place. I mean, if you go to the IGA counter, there's tons of stuff sold in the black plastic in their case.
Well, Gary has proved agreeable on a lot of things.
He's still wrapping the bananas in on a styrofoam platter with a plastic wrap all around. And sticker. Don't forget the sticker, Connie. There's always a sticker on it.
Plastic stickers.
The sticker, I hate the
Yeah.
sticker.
So
It's so,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's so hard. The wrap program, which I still go to the school and pick up giant bags of plastic to bring down to the Big Y. But wrap, you get a Ziploc bag and it's stretchy, clear plastic, but then they have that hard rib of the blue or the red that makes it a Ziploc, and that makes that part of it at least non-recyclable. So if you wanted to recycle it, you'd have to cut that off.
I have these.
and when Connie tells us that she picks up this wrap from KCS, just to be clear, it fills her car ×2 at least. So she is doing such a crazy woman job for us. It's ridiculous. Like,
Even went
I
and got
look
a
in her
bigger
car and I think, oh my goodness, Connie, you've now like totally crazy.
She also got a bigger car. So she
Well,
could
she has
carry
a
'em
pretty
all.
big car.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just, but the school is good. They collect it, and yes, it does make us feel better. I'm not sure. It's not the answer, but it makes us
It
feel like
also
we're
keeps
doing
it out of
something.
the recycling. And the
And-
bags.
And maybe
are-
the oceans.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to move on because there really was no update on sustainable materials management income. We're just griping now. All of ours, community science, linkage assessments, no update. Hopefully, you know, at some point we will have somebody from HBA come and tell us about linkage assessments. But that is for another day.
Wait,
And
I would just say that we do have a little update because we
Okay.
did coordinate that Follow the Forest and Paul is going into Kent Center School and presenting to the 5th and 6th grade for 2 hours. And so we might not be listening to Paul talk to us, but our students are listening. And I think that's pretty fabulous.
great. I'm just writing soon. Okay, the last item. I'm not well briefed on this. And I'm not even sure that it qualifies as Western Connecticut clean air action. But some of you might be aware that over in Dover, there are, I think, 4 different power or utility structures, whatever, new installations that are planned. Has that crossed anyone's radar yet?
Nope, I don't know about it.
Well, the ones we talked about a while ago.
No, they're back on. They're back on. Yeah.
These are the new ones, I think, are underground pipes, aren't they, and connections?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Take a look, you know, in the news, Google it, Facebook it. I have a feeling that we should be paying attention to it, and I don't know the specifics. And I apologize for not checking before our meeting, but I just didn't have time.
So just look for Cricket Valley over there.
It's not Cricket Valley, though. It's like different ones. There are like 4 new proposals. They're near there, but they're not Cricket Valley.
I think they're pipelines and boosters of some sort. And
Power
methane is the big concern.
Power distribution, I believe, is part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
All right.
doesn't make
But
me happy about it.
connect to the power plant then?
It's
That's fine.
separate.
It's
Okay.
not on the same footprint.
No, but I suppose they connect to the power plant and make use of
Yeah.
their power, or
I think it's to increase their ability to distribute what they produce.
So
Yeah.
something not, you know, does not make sense for us to guess tonight. But if you have time, please try and take a look, and I'll leave it on the agenda. You know, and hopefully we don't miss a window by waiting a month on that. For new business, I did put together the calendar for next year. I'm just going to show that up. If I can find it, here it is. It ended up that none of our, to my knowledge, and Melissa, you'll check me, none of our regularly scheduled, like the second Wednesday, interfered with a holiday this year, with the exception that April 12th, and you'll see my question mark, is during Passover, but it is not night 1 or night 2. It's sort of towards the end. So we could go a week later if we wanted to. I don't know that it's a big deal to have a meeting during that part of Passover when people aren't doing seders every night. What's your opinion?
I would say we should push it 1 week because that the 10th is probably a holiday because it's Easter Sunday and then Easter Monday. And so then we're gonna end up not putting in our agenda and we're gonna end up with a special meeting anyway.
Mm,
You're talking about May
good
10th?
point. No,
April.
Oh,
It-
April, oh, April.
Not that that happens to us or anything. I'm just,
not that we've ever done that before.
oh, never.
Wendy, Melissa's point is, that when there's a holiday on a Monday, that it catches us off guard if we don't get the agenda out and notice the meeting on that Friday, because we need to give sufficient notice. So, I'm fine either way. Should we change April 12th to April 19th? Does anyone have an issue with that?
I think we should change it. I personally think that it just takes that one, because it's gonna be a special meeting if we don't.
Okay, so here's the draft. All of these meetings, as I said, coincide with our second Wednesday practice. The meeting calendar also follows our usual practice of not meeting in August and having the meetings that occur during daylight savings time. When it gets darker earlier, we meet at 6:30. When it gets darker later, we meet at 7 in order to allow some of us to do, more work or outside activity during the daylight. So I would need a motion though, so that we can approve this and send it on to Darlene.
I move that change and send it on.
Okay. Second,
Wendy seconded it.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. So I'll send that along and I'll also distribute it to all of you so you can mark your calendars. Is there any other new business? Actually, we didn't amend the agenda, so you can't anyway. Forget it.
Do we have to appoint new officers by the end of the year or by January?
I never remember because I don't
Yeah.
remember if we have annual terms, if we have longer terms.
Thought we did officers
I thought
every
it was like
year,
a 3-year
didn't we?
term.
Oh, no,
I don't know.
but.
It probably is just an annual thing. But I don't see it changing, so. I don't think it's a big deal. Sorry, Connie, you're
Well,
stuck.
You don't want to be chair or
Or the
scribe?
secretary?
Why don't you take turns?
Anyone want to do the minutes?
You and Connie
Come
can
on,
take
Melissa.
turns.
Not it.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, I know.
But Carol is very helpful to me in preparing the agenda and distributing it. And so I just want to, she's not here, but I want to recognize how helpful she is in doing that. All right. There is no correspondence. Oh, there is. There's one piece of correspondence. It's a thank you note from CLCC. I had it in here. I might have taken it out to make more room in my. Yeah, it did. There's a thank you note from CLCC for the dues.
Oh,
Okay. And
not from the other two?
no, only CLCC.
Speaking of thank you, Connie, thank you for all the information you put together about the land acquisition fund. That was very helpful.
Which I will send to you. Because I know you didn't memorize it.
You
While
send
it
it
was shared
around.
on screen.
Mhm.
You'll send it around.
I'll send it around. Yeah. And I'm only gonna share it with you, Mike.
Who's gonna
Just
talk
to
to,
Take a mental picture and then remember it.
Make it larger as you remember it.
Yeah.
Who's gonna talk to who?
Darlene about setting up a Conservation Commission Google Drive?
I feel like we already did.
I don't think it lands with Darlene. I think it lands with Ty. I think
Oh.
Ty has to do it for us.
Okay. Well, do you want me to email Ty and ask her if she's the person that sets that up?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's in keeping with being more transparent all of our documents going out in that format. We should all be able to add things to it.
Okay. I will do that. Okay, I think we're ready to adjourn. Is everyone good with that?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn,
It is. So we'll do
8:04.
Liddy and Melissa. It's 8:04. Our meeting is adjourned. I'm gonna stop the recording.